Hello and welcome to today's webinar on future-proofing your business with hyper-personalized marketing and AI. I am David Raab, founder and CEO of the CDP Institute, and our speaker today is Scott Buelter, CEO of Ascent 360. Scott, welcome.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. So before we dive into our topic, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and Ascent 360?
That's great. Thank you. First off, it's great to be here. Very much going to enjoy the conversation. Again, my name is Scott Buelter. I'm the CEO and founder of Ascent 360. We are a customer data platform. I've actually been in the data business for a long time. I guess I'd say I joined the data business before data was cool. I went to Experian, maybe 20, 25 years ago. And that's at that time they had the largest database in the world. That was the credit database. It's not even close to, one of the top 10,000 databases anymore because data's grown so much. At the time, my sort of compatriots asked me why in the world I was going to go to a data processing company. But over time, I spent time at Merkle and other SaaS software companies until I founded Ascent 360. And the core theme through all of that was, how data will change the way we look at things. And I think that there's no better example of that than what AI is doing now. All right, the AI is the technology, but the data is the training. And I guess I'd say that's what we're here to talk about today.
Okay, I've heard about this AI thing. Be happy to learn something more about it. And in fact, today we're going to discuss all kinds of things about CDPs and e-commerce and AI and messaging and the creative process in AI and all sorts of exciting things. So let's just start with a kind of a high level view of how you and Ascent 360 think about AI in the CDP space.
Yeah. So I guess I'd probably start with, that I'm in the camp of people who believes that AI is fundamentally transformative. It's going to transform every piece of the business. I think we've got some vision into what that is. I don't think we fully understand what those things are. But I think what I'd say is, there's sort of along 6 or 7 dimensions. We can already see how it's going to change our business. I think it's one of those things that it's going to be sort of gradual changes, and it'll be gradual until all of a sudden everything's different, and we look back and can see how different those things are. And I think I'd probably start with this sort of core idea, which is we've changed our mission statement because of AI. And what you see here is, right, enable one-to-one communications, interactions, and transactions at scale. And I think what you'd say is, well, how's that so much different? And what if you would have looked at it, let's call it, a year ago, you wouldn't have had transactions. And when we say transactions, what we mean are, purchases, bookings, actual sales that occur from the CDP that don't occur today, or at least that aren't sort of trackable in that perspective.
So yeah, that's certainly a big change for CDP, right? CDPs traditionally have not done transactions. They've taken in transaction data from other systems. So certainly want to hear more about why you think that's going to happen and how that's going to happen, because I think it will be a pretty big change. I don't know if you want to go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually got something of a sort of demo into what that is. And let me show that to you briefly. So let's just say that you're doing one of these things that is relatively standard out of a CDP, right? You are going to send someone some kind of a pre-arrival message. In this case, let's call it a text message. And what you want to tell them is, dear friend, we'd like to confirm your tea time tomorrow or at whatever time. Please let us know if you're arriving or need to cancel. And so you want to send this text message, and so typically what you have today is you've got this process of saying, type C to cancel, or call us to cancel, or click here to go to the website, that sort of thing. And I think with AI that changes, right? So we say, okay, great, we've got this text message. Let's go send it to the people that are going to get it. That thing then goes out. And here I'll sort of show you a example of how that's starting to look. So, um, I don't know if you can hear the sound or not, but it's actually speaking to me, and that's why I was sort of pausing. David, could you hear the sound?
No.
Okay, great. I won't. I'll sort of silence it so it doesn't go. But so now I've got this text message, and I can cancel my tea time. But what I might say is something like ugh, I think I might cancel. Is there a fee to cancel? And I can then ask the AI, right? And so the AI is going to respond, and you can see that I've already told it that I might cancel, but it's not going to think somehow that I told it. It doesn't think that I'm actually canceling, even because I had the word in there, right? So great. There's no fee to cancel, and then I'm going to say, yes, let's cancel. And so now you're kind of asking, well, okay, um, so now you might ask, okay, great, you've canceled the tea time, but how do we sort of keep the customer? How do we upsell the customer? And so here it's asking, great, I could rebook at another time. And all of a sudden, yeah, that's great. I actually do want to rebook. So now I'll say, yes, do you have any tea times on Sunday? And so what's it going to do, right? What it's actually doing is bumping up against the e-commerce API, and it's right now looking for tea times on Sunday. So, it's a little bit slow, but it is out there looking for those tea times to see if, in fact, there are any available. This is a demo, so I hope it looks a little more quickly. But what it's going to do is give me, so now this is actually great because it actually realizes I need more information. There'll be 3 of us. And what you could do is send me to go searching for this stuff myself. But of course, that sort of separates me from the activity, right? Instead, I'm working with someone that feels like a person. I will take the 9:15. So great news, right? It now knows that there's some available. Awesome. It's going to book it for me. Thanks. And we're off to the races. So what I would argue is that what we've got is sort of a new paradigm that you can't really do or execute on today, right? So as an example, right, we all know that we're sending pre-arrival emails, text messages, we're selling sort of upsell, cross-sell, all sorts of enhancement experiences, and those things just don't happen very well. It's transferring from the messaging, the CDP, to the messaging system, to the e-commerce system, and all of a sudden you're sort of bringing all of these things together in one. And I guess I could argue that the AI will become like one of the most producing salespeople in your organization, right? There's literally thousands of those salespeople because it's really just a question of compute power.
And that AI is part of the CDP.
That's exactly right. So as you know, all CDPs do, we are tied tightly into APIs. So we're pulling data out of e-commerce systems. We're pulling guests out of e-commerce systems, and we are very close to those APIs. And so, well, what we're doing is effectively training that AI on the API, and not just saying, "Hey, go pull data from them." Let's go actually send data back and forth and start interacting from a sort of e-commerce perspective. And it's really just about training the AI on how to use that API. Of course, it needs authentication, which is great, so it keeps it secure. But nonetheless, it is effectively using the API to be your salesperson.
Right. Okay, so it's inheriting all those connections that you had to build to construct the CDP in the first place, as opposed to having a separate chat bot, which you then would have to separately integrate with all those other systems. So there's a fairly major savings of effort and grief involved.
Yeah, I think that's totally accurate. So anytime you build a CDP, you need to get to know that source system pretty darn well. And in the process, you say, well, you might as well teach it how to do all these things that you'd like it to do to achieve those goals.
Right. Okay, well, that actually is a pretty major change. So let's step back. So in general, how is AI changing the way that we approach messaging, not just in the CDP?
Yeah, so there's I guess a couple things there. One is certainly around the personalization of messaging is going to go from what you might call one to a segmented many to true one-to-one, right? So if we back up 20 years and look at the old Peppers and Rogers the one-to-one world book that came out that gave us our initial marching orders, right? Where we say, well, we want to talk to the right person at the right time with the right message in the right place. That vision has been a really good one, and it's been driving us forward. But the reality is no one's achieved that or anything even close to it. What we have achieved is, hey, let's know an enormous amount about the guest. Let's then segment to the guest, and let's act on the guest behaviors. So even if you've got a segment of loyal customers or high spenders or something like that, you're really talking to all of them as a group. And I think that changes totally with AI. So you can in fact teach the AI all about an individual, and that AI can create messaging to the individual, and that is from every one of those perspectives, right? It can know the best. It can know the right channel to talk to them on. It can know the right message. It can know the right offer. That doesn't mean there's not a tremendous amount of effort in training the AI on that. And the CDP is the fundamentally important piece of the puzzle, right? So we should all actually be remarkably happy that we're in this sort of CDP world, because the CDP has the data to train the AI to then go get to speak with guests.
Right, because otherwise you'd have to basically invent the CDP before you could even begin the work on the AI things. So.
I think that's right. So you can imagine there's sort of other players that say that they're probably in a fine spot. We're on a Zoho Zoom, and you can imagine that Zoho themselves, where they have a lot of sort of customer service type software, is going to be in a pretty good spot. Some of the e-commerce tools are certainly going to know things about the account holder, but nobody actually knows everything about the customer. except for the CDP. So it's really in a very nice place, a very nice position to start treating customers like we want to, and that's I guess been the vision of almost every CDP company out there, for the past 8 years. It's just that AI all of a sudden makes it possible.
Mm-hmm. So there's more going on here than just chatbots, right? You want to talk about how the AI impacts offering and loyalty and discounts. There's other kinds of messaging going on.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. I think thing one is I tend to believe that the entire user interface that drives the internet today is going to shift. So right now our entire sort of mechanism in front of us is a keyboard, a mouse, and a screen where we scroll around and click and those things. And compute is going to change toward something that might be a sort of voice interaction. And so I don't know if anybody's played enough with Perplexity or even with the iOS app that ChatGPT offers, but it does offer this sort of conversational mode. And that conversational mode is where you are talking to the AI, it is responding, it has memory of everything you're asking it, and you can have sort of robust conversations. If in fact you wanted to, you could have an AI interview you, ask you 10 questions, and then have it turn that conversation into a blog post, those sort of things. But maybe what you sort of see on the screen now is conceptually what you might find the interface looking a little bit more like, right? Where you're actually chatting, not through typing, but just through talking with an AI and asking it to achieve things for you. And it is actually building an interface in real time to deliver back whatever results it might want, right? So if you are searching for hotels, it can search, it can then deliver results back to you. Those results are going to be, it coding the HTML and delivering them back to you, or delivering back to you in some other way. And so the entire, I think, sort of conception of how we interact with our computers is going to change. And that is especially true when you sort of consider that the AI has access to the CDP, and the CDP is the thing that knows about you. So it knows where you've stayed before, it knows how much you've spent, it sort of understands your core persona. And I like to sort of show this as an example of hyper personalization, right? Where from the CDP we know that John Smith is 65 and enjoys luxury and fine dining, and so you've got this sort of hyper personalized message that is saying, dear Mr. Smith, we're delighted to welcome you to the resort. We'd like to elevate your experience. We recommend making a reservation at the chef's table, and on and on. And the things that we know about John Smith are the things that we're talking to John Smith about. And Emily Taylor, right? Totally different. 29, fitness enthusiast, adventure, right? That messaging is talking about the yoga classes and the sort of flexible passes that we have, and the other adventures that we might have. And I know some of my examples are sort of hospitality focused, but this applies just as well to retail, e-commerce. We work with many jewelry stores, and you can only imagine that someone's purchase history will certainly drive the sort of things that you might talk to them about. We've got clients who sell both high-end jewelry and sort of Pandora sort of more sort of day-to-day wear, and of course the CDP will know that. Because of the CDP, we know that, and so we're able to kind of communicate with individuals. And just to say it, right? So what I'm showing here is something that we've been able to create in reality, to drive some campaigns. Now, we've only done this on sort of a very small basis because we still see tons and tons of risk here, and we don't think it's ready for prime time. And that's like okay, right? It is under development. The technology is advancing, and I fully expect that what we'll find in a few years is this will be implemented across the board.
So you want to talk a little about those risks?
Yeah. So the risks are in some sense kind of comical today. You'll find a couple of things that is true about AIs. I guess the first one is that AIs do develop sort of what we call hallucinations over time, but the AI will in fact fill in blanks if it doesn't know the answer. So when you actually get down to what these large language models are doing, they're actually just filling in blanks, right? It is a sort of, hey, predict the next most likely word and add that in, and what comes out is truly remarkable. But if it doesn't know the answer, it will just simply make up the answer, and that is difficult and is something that the industry is sort of dealing with and trying to figure out. Now the good news is, if in fact you are limiting the AI to something that is a little bit more limited in what it's trying to achieve, then you have less of those hallucinations. That's one risk. Another risk that I think is quite real is that you can sort of prompt engineer AIs to answer whatever you would like them to answer. I'm sure everyone on the call here is familiar with that case where a guy prompted a AI bot at a Chevy dealer to sell him a Chevy Tahoe for like $7. Right? It took him like 35 minutes of convincing the AI and prompting him that how it should act differently than it was trained to act. But at the end, it sold him a Chevy Tahoe for $7. Now, I don't actually know whether that became a lawsuit or it was carried on in any legal manner, or it was just sort of fun to try to do. There are risks around that as well, and what I would argue is that those risks are fully manageable within the context of how you train the AI. So as an example, that AI that I was just showing you, that has the sort of integration into the Lightspeed Golf API and can look up and book tee times, that has also been sort of heavily trained to ward against that prompt engineering. And so, if I would ask it to, hey, what's a good recipe for potato salad? It would not answer, right? It would say, I'm sorry, I'm not able to answer this question. And what I'd say is that it's sort of incumbent on everyone that is wandering into this space to take it pretty seriously and start managing the sort of rules that you are placing around the AI to make sure that you can't get around those rules. Is it foolproof? We don't actually know that, right? It hasn't been battle tested yet, and we're going to sort of battle test it very slowly. That is maybe my sort of most important suggestion for anyone on the phone listening, is that you want to sort of get into this space as quickly as you can, and then sort of take it slowly. It's going to take a year or two to work out the kinks, but what we'll find is in a year or two, probably most of your customer service is going to be AIs. Most of your content generation is going to be AIs, and you're going to grow to learn to trust those AIs. That's I think what we'll find over time.
All right. Well, you're obviously making me a little nervous here.
Yep.
Who's going to do all this training? I'm a marketer. I signed up for taking pretty pictures and writing clever words. I didn't sign up to to anti-prompt engineer AI systems. That sounds like a kind of a technical
Yep.
goal.
So I actually do think it is your CDP partner, like Ascent 360. It's our job to do that. Now the good news is most of our clients have an enormous trove of data to start that training, right? It's not just the CDP. It actually is all the sort of customer service interactions that they've had over some number of years, right? Those are somewhere in HubSpot or Zoho or whatever other tool people are using to manage this. And so that's all trainable. And then I'd say also the core rules to limit the AI. I think I sort of see those being developed by the community, and people are sharing what works and what doesn't work, and those are all getting sort of ingested into the AI itself. So I guess I'd say 6 months ago, we ourselves in our own testing were sort of experiencing some of the sort of AI that is hallucinating, and more we don't see it because we are sort of we've built the system robustly enough that you just don't see it anymore.
Okay, good. I'll
Yeah.
sleep a little better.
Yeah.
Somebody else is going to solve that problem for me.
Yeah.
Let me actually just break into here and say, if you do have questions, there's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, little question mark thing, and just go ahead and put those in there, and we will answer them either as they come in or at the end, depending on the nature of the question. So let's move. So actually, we're kind of halfway there anyhow into more of the technical questions. We talked about how AI was going to impact marketing and personalized content, and how you're going to get offers that hopefully are real offers, not $7 Toho offers from AI. And we didn't talk about creating marketing materials, but that kind of, I think, comes along with it. But under the covers, behind the scenes, under the hood, whatever you want to say. How's AI impacting the database marketing, the database management functionality in CDPs?
Yeah, I think the most important thing that I see is that, and this is sort of shifting from, hey, we've got AI built into the product and our clients are using it to make what they do better. This is shifting into, well, what are software companies doing with AI to make their software better and speed up development and that sort of thing. And I'd say, first of all, like if every developer isn't using an AI coding assistant, they should start. These AI coding assistants are making people dramatically faster at what they need to do. And I'll actually give an example here, right? So here I'm just simply saying, that AIs get a lot faster. And what you can see here is just a little prompt that we're actually going to put into an AI, and I just need to find it here and copy it. So one of the sort of, if you will, there's a fair bit of drudgery involved in building CDPs, and that is often, hey, we got to go get a lot of data from a API, and we've got to put that data into our system, and we can simply tell it to do those things. So I'm just gonna hit sort of send here, and all I'm saying is, hey, go get all the customers and all of the customer reservations from an API using Python, and then I want you to stuff all that data into a database. And it's simply writing all the code for us to do that. And what I'll just suggest is that this code will in fact work. It does, of course, it doesn't have the API keys and it doesn't have authentication. But as you can see, it is just simply building all the code to, first of all, get all that data, and then push it into tables. Now, this example is sort of not the most interesting one, because when we put that data into our platform, we've got a very specific place to put it. But what's true also is that you can train the AIs on your stack. So we internally at Ascent360 use one of the AI vendors that is very good at coding. We are training it on our stack and how we code. All of that data is private to us, meaning it is not used to go train other AIs. And you got to pay for that. I definitely would implore everyone out there to not use the free versions of ChatGPT or Claude or any of the others, just simply because that data that you put in there is not private. You probably did hear that all the details of a Samsung phone were released publicly because Samsung was using a public version, and that public version was using that data to learn and was then delivering that information to everyone else. But in this case, right, what we could do is tell it where we want it to land. It knows where we want it to land, and now it's coding all that for us. And what I'll say there is that our developers are remarkably talented, and their jobs aren't at risk with this type of coding, right? This is the sort of blocking and tackling, and just if you will, maybe what you might call the drudge work. They already know how to do it. They've already done it 100 times. And do they want to do it another time? They don't. But so now our developers are, if you will, free to think about architectural questions, strategic questions. They're free to think about the sort of complex transformations that are going to need to happen to really wow a client, rather than thinking about how this thing is going to go and code the sort of standard stuff.
Okay, well, freeing developers from drudgery is certainly a good thing. We haven't quite gotten to the George yet, so my entire job is to push one button thing, but I guess we're moving in that direction. Well, it's interesting. I'll just throw in a little personal anecdote here, which is my son actually is a data engineer, and we were playing with this one weekend when he was visiting. And what quickly became apparent to me was that if you do a query like the one you just did, where it spits back Python code, that is Greek to me. I can't tell if it's right or wrong, and I can't make sense of it. And if it is wrong, I have no idea what the problem is. Whereas he, of course, understanding that stuff, I was saying, oh yeah, it's doing this, it's doing that. I can see, and so I think even in this world of less drudgery, you still got to know what you're doing. You still got the technical work still is going to require technicians. So just
that's exactly right. And the sort of a corollary to that is that whatever your son is doing, he definitely has like sort of chosen preferences on libraries, as an example, that he would like to use. And he needs to tell the AI that, right? The AI needs to know that he wants to use those specific libraries, or the AI is just going to choose some random library that'll achieve the same goal, but now your code becomes a bit convoluted. I did just read an article that 25% of the code that is getting implemented inside of Alphabet, is generated by AIs. But as you sort of noted with your son, it's all being overseen by really, really smart people.
Right. And yeah, my son's one of those smart people. Okay, so let's switch back, unless you have something else to say about. I mean, I think that the potential, and just repeat what you said, of AI to speed up the development and employment of CDPs is tremendous, and something that hasn't been talked about enough, although we are hearing about it now a little more than we were 2 or 3 months ago. because there is so much drudgery, and and it's been a huge bottleneck in deployment often, building those connectors and so on. So the idea of this being made easier, again, not so easy that you don't need technical people, because you will, but taking, a month's worth and doing it in a week or in a couple of hours, depending on how you think about it, huge implications for CDP in particular. All right, so let's then circle back a little bit about to the customers, and how's AI going to change how they actually communicate with business? Is it just they're going to be talking now instead of typing, or is there more going on there than that?
I think it's a combination of all those things. I would argue that in 5 years you actually won't know if you're talking to an individual on the phone or if you are talking to a AI. And I don't think you're even going to be able to sort of ask it that or trick it into telling you the answer if you want to, unless the company themselves is fine with that. So you can imagine, and this is of course scary stuff, that most customer service centers won't exist in the way that they do today. It will in fact be all AI oriented, and those AIs will in fact have personalities. And so, a luxury goods AI service AI will act fundamentally different than someone else. The other thing is, I think, and this is the advantage of the CDP, is that those AIs will know enough about you and will have rules written for them on how they should interact with you. So, let me go back 15 years. And when I was at Merkle, we were building models, sort of predictive models on how much customers spent with DirecTV and what we predicted they would spend. And we sent that score back to their service center. And the service center had rules for them around how they treated the customer. So if in fact someone, and it was in that case, a 0 to 5 stars. If someone got 5 stars, what it meant is that they subscribed to some very expensive package at DirecTV. They buy pay-per-view events. They buy extra movies. And so if that customer calls and says, hey, I got really upset and threw my DVR out the window, they'd say, oh, no problem, sir. We'll send you another one immediately. If they got 0 stars, meaning they call into customer service all the time, they're actually an expensive customer, that DirecTV would actually send them suggestions to move over to Dish, right? They didn't necessarily want the customer anymore. And so you can imagine with a CDP how you might be able to have it interact with your very high quality guests and or customers. I'll tell you right now, I tend to think that this doesn't work very well inside of almost every company out there. Are people actually understanding who the customer is when they start having the conversation and then decide how they treat the customer? The AI will do that flawlessly. So if they can see that a customer is a very loyal guest, they've purchased many times, they've spent a lot of money, then sure, you can cancel your reservation at no cost, no problem. If in fact they are the opposite, then they're going to change those rules, and those are rules that we need to start thinking about. So. And there's some elements that are in that are actually quite frightening, right? You might even say I'm describing something like a social credit score, and I really don't mean it to be that terrifying, but I think it is in fact what will happen, and service will be fundamentally different based on who you are and how you've interacted with the company that you're trying to talk to.
Well, to your point, 15 years ago, they were treating different customers differently based on how valuable a customer they were. So I don't know that that's something that we can particularly blame AI for. AI will make it easier and more efficient, and hopefully,
Yep.
perhaps a little fairer. But you did make one comment that I want to push back on a little bit about whether you would know you were talking to an AI or not. Certainly, all the research that I've seen says that people want to know whether or not they're talking to an AI. It's kind of pretty high up, actually, on
Yeah.
the list of things that make them comfortable. So, do you really think companies are going to try to hide that?
I don't think that they are in the near future. And even in that example I showed, where was like, hey, do you want to cancel your golf reservation? You can see that I sort of explicitly put in, I'm an AI and I can help you, because I think that right now you certainly would know, and trying to fool someone into that would I think make them quite frustrated. But I tend to think over time, the speech technology is becoming remarkable. The ability to dictate and understand that speech is becoming remarkable also. And then we can already see that you can train personality, you can train sort of tone and timing, you can train even the sort of method of speaking, the words that get used. That is all trainable. And of course, CD vendors like us are sort of actively working on that problem. So I guess I'd say, whether or not in 5 years people are going to keep telling people that they're talking to an AI or not, I don't know. I just believe that you wouldn't need to, and it would be impossible for the customer to figure it out.
So, do you think people will care? Customers will care if they're talking to an AI or not?
Uh, I don't think ultimately that they will, and I think the reason is that they're gonna be really good at their jobs. So many of us get remarkably frustrated when we call in to a helpline and talk to someone, and they actually don't know how to answer the question. They're sort of floundering around. They're answering with sort of half questions, and that gets very frustrating. And you sort of talk to people all the time that have these very frustrating journeys. I tend to think that the AI is actually going to know how to answer just about every question. Unfortunately, that answer might often be no, right? Can I have a refund? No. Hey, can you extend my loyalty points for another month? No, right? Those things are going to get very frustrating, and maybe people will, ask to speak to managers or whatever, just like they do today. But I think there's very much a brave new world, right? It is what we're gonna find.
Yeah. We'll see how it all works out. So, there's one question here in the Q&A that I want to make sure we get to. So, I'm just going to read it. The foundation of personalization for marketing is segmentation of the customer for audience management. For a specific campaign return on ad spend goal, how is this achieved within CDP? So, I'm not 100% sure I understand what they're asking, but I guess it's how do you target a campaign for a particular goal like the return on ad spend? Can AI do that? Can it optimize for a particular metric?
Yeah, I think so. Let's actually talk about revenue attribution, and I think that's in some way related to this. Right now, if in fact we send some sort of an upsell cross sell campaign, or our client does, anyways, we're going to attribute all sorts of revenue to that that campaign, but it's actually very difficult to be able to sort of parse through and understand, would that person have purchased anyways? Were they in fact purchasing a product related to the campaign itself, or was it a secondary product? All those sorts of things. I think two things are true. Thing one is, if in fact that person makes the purchase with the AI, like we showed in that second booking, or if you get a campaign that says, you're arriving at the hotel in 3 days, would you like to upgrade to a suite? Once they execute on that, and if they do it through the AI, you have in some ways an enormous amount of certainty that in fact it is what your action was to drive the campaign forward. So I guess I'd say I tend to think that the attribution models are going to get better because of AI, because what I've found is no one really trusts their attribution model today. It's very directional, and people are very happy when they see the numbers big, but they also say, well, yeah, but some of that would have happened anyways. I think we're just going to be able to have more insight into, is it the right answer or not? But even then, I don't think it's going to be perfect.
Yeah, I think perfect attribution probably will never happen. I'm not
Yep.
sure it's possible, even in theory, maybe in theory. But well, can I actually, let me just go to that, because the textbook answer is incrementality testing, right? You say, that's the only way you really know. So can AI help with that?
We said it again. I didn't quite hear you.
I said the textbook answer to the problems with attribution is you should do incrementality tests and actually test what the incremental impact is of a particular promotion. So does AI play a role in doing that?
I don't actually see why not. Right there's a lot of ability to, sort of create holdout groups that then you can, test in different ways. You can create probably as many tests as you want, and sort of watch what is in fact happening if you do in fact get the offer or don't get the offer. I actually haven't thought about it enough. So maybe what I'd say is, I'm not sure if it's going to be any better than what we're doing today from that perspective. So I don't know, maybe sort of mediocre answer from me there.
Well, I think it'll make it a lot easier. I mean, because setting up those tests is very complicated today. And multivariate testing, sort of the same thing, and definitely overlapping anyhow with incrementality. And again, multivariate testing is tremendously complex. So
Yeah.
hopefully the AIs will just make that all easy for us. Hopefully, and we'll see.
Right.
Then you still have to decide whether you're going to trust it or not, right?
Yeah.
All right, so we have lots of other stuff to talk about. You want to talk a little about privacy and versus personalization? We kind of tangentially touched on that, but certainly it's an issue for a lot of people. So how does AI balance that? Or how do people balance that? Really, I think we can't delegate that.
Yeah, I tend to think that is going to happen through some element of regulation. We've got a bunch of privacy laws out there. They're probably the weakest in the United States, but the California has a strong privacy law, and Oregon, just starting in January 2025, has a very strong privacy law as well. So I guess I'd say I tend to believe that there will be a bunch of pushback if this technology gets used irresponsibly. And I would argue that it's 100% going to get used irresponsibly, not necessarily by anybody on this call or even any of the CDP vendors. But we just went through an election where almost everyone received hundreds of unwanted text messages without the ability to get out of them, and all of that sort of stuff. And maybe what you'll start finding is that citizens are actually starting to use AIs of their own for those exact same things, right? So the AI will only show you the text messages that you're interested in. And, the AI will search for your data wherever it might be and put in right to be forgotten requests for you. And then, you can start cleaning yourself out of the dark web one way or another. But I think it will start looking a little bit like a arms race.
Yeah, there was just a piece yesterday I saw about somebody created a chat bot to talk to the scammers on the phone, a granny bot. Wait their time. 40
I,
minutes talking to an AI.
I would love to do that. When I was younger and had more time, I enjoyed leading them on for a while. I should create a chat bot to do that for me.
Right, so maybe AI will save us after all. All right, so we're kind of running to the end. This is a fascinating discussion, incidentally, so I'd like to go on, but um, kind of general advice for people. I mean, we talked about some of the risks and we talked about many of the opportunities, and uh, how do people prioritize? Like, what should they do?
Yeah. So let me kind of take us through, let me answer that question with two slides. Just one is, look, this is enabling hyper personalization. You can already see it. I can give you examples today, like I did. It will enhance, not replace marketers. We didn't really get to, how marketers are using it specifically, but it's the same way that developers are. Our marketing team at Ascent, they're creating content, they're creating blog posts, they're creating articles, they're actually writing things and having AIs write them better. It is freeing time for creativity and strategy. We talked mostly about large language models, and the other weird thing that's true about what we're finding in artificial intelligence is, well, it's not, those models aren't really good for big data, right? It's different models. It's the sort of predictive analytics that will drive some of this change also, or it is effectively required to help us understand the consumer and the guest way better. What I do believe is that your top sales producer over time will be an AI. Just like I was showing, like you want to send, if you're a hotel and you want to send a upsell, like, book a suite, it's very hard, because by the time someone looks at that email, you may not have a suite anymore. And so what is required there is an actual salesperson, and that salesperson today is a human on the phone. But you can imagine that, if you've got a sales team of 10 today that is managing a call center, you can have a team of thousands or hundreds of thousands if that's what it takes, because it's just really a question of compute power. And you could sort of see why NVIDIA's earnings are so strong, because a lot of people realize it's really just a question of compute power. And then we actually do think that sort of trust and ethics is important, right? So prioritizing privacy and the ethical use of AI will in fact earn customer loyalty. We've already done some tests to say if we message too closely to the truth, people will shy away from it. It's very uncomfortable when that happens. And this is important. Like a lot of our messaging today really is around how do we upsell, cross sell, how do we build revenue. I tend to think that we're actually going to foster deeper relationships with the customer, right? We're going to thank them more often. We're going to sort of treat them better more often. We're going to know who's valuable and allow them to use the system in ways that are important. And then, sort of to your final thing, right? Sort of suggestions or what your question really was, is we tend to think that ineffective data utilization is going to hurt you in the future, right? You're going to miss all these marketing opportunities. You're not going to be able to personalize guest experiences. It will hurt revenue, and it will you will sort of not know answers to really fundamental questions. And we already know this is true for people who don't use CDPs, right? They really don't know who their best guests are. And that definitely, the guest knows that the company doesn't know them, and that really tends to hurt them.
And I think the expectation will quickly become that you deliver that higher level of service.
Yes.
So companies that don't are really going to be at a major disadvantage. It's not just about like lost incremental revenue. It's your customers are going to go someplace else where they get a better experience,
Absolutely.
which we don't want to happen.
Right.
Great. Well, I think this has been terrific. Thank you, Scott. It's really great to talk about this stuff with someone who's living it. I just play one on TV, so
Yep.
I'm merely a consumer. Thank you all for attending. You will get the recording of this 24 hours from now. And of course, reach out to Scott or Sim360 if you have any additional questions or comments. And we will end it there. And again, have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Scott.
I agree. Thanks. That was a really fun conversation, David. Thank you so much.
Yep, my pleasure.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.